I was always very cautious about the steps I wanted to take in my career because of the fear that my dad had instilled into me. You can't up.
Yeah.
So
Failure is not an option.
Failure is not an option, he said. I always thought, okay, if my businesses don't work out, I need at least 3 years experience in the industry, in the field that I'm doing, to make sure I can fall back onto a full-time role. The one job that was a pivotal moment in my career was freelancer.com. I was able to apply all these design decisions and strategies that I used in affiliate marketing to build a platform to help connect business owners with freelancers. It was actually a very interesting working experience because I was surrounded by really smart people. It was just like exposure to everything on steroids.
You were just learning at scale basically with these guys.
Yeah, I learned so much within a year. It just sort of helped define who I was and to my skill set and the way that I would think about product monumentally.
Wow, okay.
Before we get started on today's episode, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast is recorded, the land of the Darug people. We would like to acknowledge and pay respects to our elders past and present and the next generation coming through. Now, onto today's episode. Welcome to the Level Asian podcast. Today, we're joined by Michael Wong, the founder of Mizko Media and the Designership. In this episode, we'll delve into Michael's journey from navigating through school and university to learning coding, affiliate marketing, and breaking into the tech industry. He shares his story of starting his first side hustle in front of the school canteen and how it helped him develop his entrepreneurial skills. With a platform of over 100,000 on YouTube, Michael also talks to us about the key to building a strong audience on social media and emphasizes the importance of learning soft skills as a natural introvert and balancing trial and error with striving for perfection. Michael shares his insights on the perfect business model and how he started the Designership to help businesses grow. Enjoy the episode.
Appreciate you coming on the show. I want to start with a bit of a weird esoteric first question, and that is Shaolin monk career goals. So when we did a call before this podcast, you were saying you sort of grew up wanting to be a Shaolin monk. So where did that all start, if you can walk us through that?
So I believe that we are all the product of our own environment. And growing up, the environment that I lived in was no more than just watching Jackie Chan movies. And some StarCraft and some CS, Counter-Strike 1.6. So it's just so happened to be because I watched so many Jackie Chan movies growing up. I think it just influenced me. I just wanted to do Kung Fu for the rest of my life. And I actually did train a lot of Taekwondo, did Wing Chun, did Wushu, did a bit of Muay Thai as well. And yeah, it just so happened to be that that's something that I wanted to do.
Yeah. Is that something that you're still doing now, or that's all stopped?
It's as I've grown older, more responsibilities, less time. It's something that I want to get back into. During the pandemic, I thought like once it's finished up, it's all wrapped up, I do want to get back into it. I've always wanted to do boxing. So I think it will be something that I would do take on. Yeah.
Amazing. All right. Well, let's wind it all the way back, right? We sort of like to start podcast episodes where we talk about family life, growing up. So give us a bit of an idea of what family life was like for you, and then where did you grow up here in Sydney?
So I grew up here in Cove. So prior to me being born, my sister and my parents lived in Hurstville. And when I entered this world, my parents started to think about kindergarten, started thinking about primary school. And they thought, do we want our kids to be better integrated into society, not just around Asians, but maybe other cultures as well, other nationalities? So they decided to actually pick everything up and relocate to Lane Cove, which at the time was fairly run down. Like there wasn't that much. At best, we had a few shops. We had a very basic public swimming pool, and more predominantly Caucasians in the area. And they wanted us to sort of grow up in an environment where we were exposed to other nationalities, other cultures, just so we're not so narrow-minded. So that was how I grew up. The family though, the culture, the environment though, within the family, within the household, probably wouldn't be too different to you guys. Quite traditional, quite conservative, fairly neutral. I don't want to dramatize my childhood. I don't think it was probably as bad as how some people have portrayed their childhood. I do think it was strict and it was all academic focused, but it was fairly neutral. Like there was nothing was great and nothing was like terrible. It was just...
It was good.
Just there, yeah. We just cruised through, yeah.
I find it really interesting when you said your parents actually deliberately uprooted out of an Asian community into something that is not as much with the purpose of trying to have their kids assimilate, I guess, a bit more and sort of interact with people outside of just Asian community. Are you saying like that's probably what your parents, that was the main reason for it, or that's at least what they told you?
Definitely one of the reasons.
Right.
One of the main reasons. Obviously, I think there were other reasons as well, which I'm not aware of, but they did mention that's why. Because I was wondering, why do we move away from Hurstville? Because my grandparents, who I lived with for quite a while throughout holiday periods and stuff, lived in Kingsgrove. So like they were neighboring suburbs. So why did we lift everything up and go to Lane Cove was like a question that I had.
Yeah, okay. What did your parents do growing up?
So my mum was a travel agent for 30 years, roughly 30 years. And ever since the pandemic hit, she lost her job pretty much. So she's just been in that same role, same industry for the entire time. My dad juggled numerous jobs. My dad was a waiter. He was also a hotel manager. And the last job that he had was actually helping my uncle at a warehouse.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And are they still working now or retired?
No, retired now.
They're pretty good.
They're done. They're like, no, I'm not working anymore. Yeah.
Amazing. All right. Well, then if we sort of fast forward a little bit, school life, can you walk us through sort of what school life was like for you and then university as well?
Definitely didn't go to university. I saw that question. I'm like, I wish I went to university.
Yep.
But yeah, so I went to Lane Cove Public, which was just a very standard public school in Lane Cove. Nothing really crazy there. I think even though we grew up in Lane Cove where there was like limited Asians, I was always like this token Asian kid growing up. I never felt that I was isolated in any way. I never really was confronted with like bullying. I never really experienced it to like a very extreme extent. Like I guess there were always those jokes that were thrown around, but nothing was like malicious. Everything was just banter, just having fun, just throwing a few jabs at each other. So my childhood nothing really held me back. I think because my parents decided to integrate us at such a young age, I never really thought much of it. This was just how things were meant to be. Like people looked a little bit different, but we've all got two eyes, nose and mouth. Like just because I'm Asian and my hair's black and my eyes are a little bit squintier, like I never felt different though, right? So primary school was all good. I was never really that academic. Also in terms of high school, I didn't get into selective school. So that was a bit of a drawback for me, but lucky enough I got into Marist, which was a Catholic school. Like that was a last minute thing. And then throughout high school, it was really just cruisy. I actually spent more time working on little like website projects in my spare time, trying to figure out how I could make money on the side more than anything else, to be honest.
Well, tell us a bit about that because I know you shared that with us in the call beforehand.
Yeah.
It was a crazy, like I was like, you obviously have very entrepreneurial tendencies. So I really would like to sort of walk us through that journey. Yeah.
So I think it all started from my father always ingraining into me the fact that because he had such a hard time trying to build wealth or like manage his money, he experienced the hardship of trying to pay back a loan, trying to, I wouldn't say put food on the table for us, but really trying to get ahead in terms of his finances. So because he struggled so much, he would always remind me, you need to understand how to manage your finances. You always need to start saving money. You need to think about how to make money. And I think because he was just constantly reminding me these concepts, it started to make me think about how do I actually make money? I was very curious about money. Like what was this money concept? So when I was in year 7 or year 8 it was, when the bell rang for recess, I would actually run to the canteen line and I would actually sell my spot for 50 cents, for $1, for $2. And I would let people jump in. And this was sparked when I was lining up for food at the canteen. And because I was lining up and there were impatient students around me, they would go, oh, can you help me buy like a yummy drummy and you can just keep the change?
Yeah.
Can you buy me some popcorn? Just keep the change, right? Change was like 50 cents. So I identified there was a problem. The problem was that people were impatient and the solution was to just capitalize on it. So I started doing that and I started to realize, holy crap, I can actually make some reasonable amount of money from this. And then I was always dabbling in different types of ventures. So when my dad would go to Hong Kong, he would always bring back like just 1 or 2 gifts for me and my sister. And at the time when I was in year 8, these portable MP3 players, right? You would like connect it with a USB to the computer.
Yeah, you have to download songs illegally from
songs on
LimeWire.
there. Exactly, right? But at the time, this was revolutionary, right? We were still using like dial-up, and we were still using phones that were like connected to the wall. So I thought, this is so cool. Like, can I sell this at school, right? So I'll bring a couple of boxes into school, and I'll actually try to hustle this. I never was able to sell it because I was caught doing it.
The teachers got you.
Yeah, so I was actually in the toilets, and I was in the bathroom, right? And I was like showing this guy like, this is a cool MP3. It's like revolutionary, showing him like all the different features. But the coordinator for my grade was walking past, and he overheard the conversation, but he thought they were drugs that I was selling.
Oh, really?
Right.
Okay.
So he didn't come in, but he knew it was me. So then when I went back to class after recess, or I think it was after lunch, I was in the classroom. He comes into the room and calls me out. And then he gets me to show him my locker and told me to empty my locker. Nothing there. He takes me into his room and he goes, empty your bag. And there was nothing there except the MP3 player.
Right.
And he goes, what were you selling in the bathroom? And I said, I was trying to sell this MP3 player. And he gave me a warning, goes, don't sell things at school or in the bathrooms, to steer away from that type of stuff. So ever since then, I stopped doing that, but I was always constantly thinking about, how can I make more money? How do I build wealth? Like, how do I avoid this thing that my dad kept reminding me to steer away from?
Just working full time and trying to make ends meet.
Yeah, I think he never said to avoid full time. I think he actually wanted me to get a full time job because that was stability. It was more around, he feared that I would end up the same path that he did, where he moved to a new country. He didn't really know the language. He didn't have any core skills that were valuable. So he was going through a lot of laborious work, right? And through laborious work, it's not a scalable business model, right? You're selling your time for money. So he wanted me to avoid all that. So that was the thing that he feared.
And then you mentioned obviously university, or you didn't go through university as well. So you finished high school, and then you mentioned to me actually you dabbled in like websites as well. So walk us through on sort of what was that first foray into websites and what you're doing there.
Yeah, growing up, being an Asian kid, Asian guy, it was just martial arts and gaming, right? And as you game, you spend countless hours online. And I was so obsessed with CS and StarCraft 1 and also Gunbound, where I actually wanted to create my own online community. I wanted to sell items. It was always about money, to be honest. I was always just trying to sell stuff. But it was fun. Like I really enjoyed the process of trying to sell things, because I don't know if it was the reward system that you have to go through that like was triggering dopamine in my mind that made it so enjoyable. But like, as I was spending so much time playing Gunbound, for example, where you would accumulate items and you could create skins for your character, I was trying to sell that to other players who wanted these unique skins. So the only way for doing that was to either spam the game's public chat room or go and create my own website. So I did try spam the chat room, but there was a timer that would always block me and say, you need to limit your responses in the chat room, you're spamming. So I decided to go and research, how do I make my own community? Through countless like Google searches, I found this platform called Envision Free, which allowed you to create your own online forum for free. And I did so. So I made my own forum, and then I would actually go to the chat room, and instead of just trying to sell my items, I would tell them, hey, join my online community. We can talk about Gunbound, we can sell items and trade. So there was a couple of thousand people on that community.
Wow.
And it was something that I was really passionate about. Because I was passionate about this community, it sort of led me down a path of design as well, because I wanted to design a very unique skin or theme, if you will, for the website. I wanted to make it unique to Gunbound. I wanted to make it look beautiful. I wanted to make it look delightful. I wanted to create custom graphics for people who were like moderators of the community as well. I wanted to make it special, right? So that sort of exposed me to design. But the pivotal moment was when they had a feature, this really cool feature where you could actually pay $10 to remove these ads, Google ads on the forum, right? So the way that this Envision free platform made money was that you could create a free forum, but they would have their own ads there and they would generate revenue.
Banner ads and stuff,
right? You could pay $10 a month and you could actually remove that. So because I had already made some cash, I actually paid $10 to remove it. And then I put my own ads onto the website.
Oh, wow,
right?
yeah.
So then I started to realize, holy crap, I can make money for owning this forum, for just simply like running it, because people were viewing the ads. There's a thing called CPM, which is obviously you guys would know, like 1,000 impressions, you get paid a couple of cents, maybe a few dollars, right? So I started to realize, wow, I love this concept of design. I was using like an illegal version of Adobe Photoshop at the time because I don't know where my dad got it from, but I was using it.
Your dad was the one who got the illegal version.
Exactly. It wasn't me. I pay for it now.
It was like really expensive back then. Like
it wasn't
expensive. Subscription based.
Yeah, I think it was also the fact that my dad, he didn't really know English. He didn't know where to buy this type of stuff.
Yeah.
And back in the days, everyone was like just giving things out on USBs. Your friends might have it. They give it to you on a USB. Yeah. So my dad had no idea like where to get these products from. So I learned a bit of design. I was obsessed. I learned a bit of like how to create websites, obsessed. And I think it's more about that reward system that got me so hooked. Like everything that I did, people would commend me for on this like online space. And that was sort of the start of my whole entrepreneurial like journey.
So after this forum, how long did you run that for? And then what happened after that?
So if I had to go back in time, the forum ran for like a year or so. And then what I started to realize I was more fascinated about was there was this larger forum that had like a couple 100,000 users on. It was the resource forum for forum owners. So like if I wanted to download a theme, right, you'd go to this like master community. It was called Envision Free Skin Zone. And they had thousands of users and everyone would be requesting designs. They would be requesting like a theme. Some people would have designed their own one and sell it on this massive forum, this massive community of forum owners. And I started spending more time there. And the reason why I started to spend more time there was because I was actually fulfilling design requests. I was just so passionate about design. So someone might say, I want a gaming skin for my forum. I would go just for no payment whatsoever, just for free, just for my, like, just purely because I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
I'd go and design them a theme and I'll learn how to code it. I'll learn how to put it all together and I would just give it to them. And I was just fulfilling these requests time and time again. So that's how I started to venture down a more sort of serious path for myself. It was less about gaming, more about sort of like refining my design abilities. And after that, I started to realize I was creating my own website. I started to learn how to code and started to build websites. And I really started to move away from just forums. And I was actually building like really cool websites that people could, for example, watch TV shows on. I also had a flash gaming website. So I had loaded a website up with all these games and I would just put ads on it. So I started to create these websites that people could, with a bit more utility, and actually putting ads on it and trying to think about how to monetize it. And some of them I actually sold as well. And I just started venturing down this whole path of like, website development.
How old were you at this time, or around about what year?
I would say I was around 16 to 18 when it was more of the start of the journey. And then after, which was the next stage where I started to go from just making a couple $100s a month to actually making nearly hundreds of thousands of dollars, was around 18 to 20.
Okay.
So I went from doing ad impressions, right, putting ads on websites, to doing affiliate marketing, CPA, cost per action. So instead of selling ads on websites, I was selling actions. So let's say, for example, an insurance company, they were doing market research, right? And they wanted to get postcodes of users within an area. I would then have to create a website that would help them promote that offer. So let's say you were doing, let's say that, for example, we would do a car insurance offer. Let's say there was a car insurance company that wanted to get a lot of people's personal details, their name, their email address, and the postcode that they lived in, so they could market towards them. They then craft some sort of offer, but they don't deal with the acquisition. They just come up with the offer. They will incentivize you for helping them get customers. My job was then to create websites to bring the traffic to them. And each person that I sign up, I'll get a clip.
Right.
So I was working with offers that were around $1 to $2, and I was scaling them up. And I was making a couple of $1,000 a day.
And where was this traffic coming from? Was it you were doing like ads? Were you doing SEO? What was that?
At that time, when I started to do affiliate marketing, it was definitely around social media.
Okay.
So around 2008 or 2007, I think it was, that's when Facebook started to take off, right? And I was dabbling with Facebook apps, and I was creating these sort of like these very viral apps that would sort of like get people to share apps with their friends and their friends, but to access the content that was in the app, it would be to fill in a survey, for example.
Right.
And I would be getting a clip of it.
You did that so early on. I think you were so ahead of the game. But at the time, like you were so young as well, and you were like self-taught. So what kind of resources did you have at the time to teach yourself coding and affiliate marketing and everything you're doing now?
Funny enough, there was no real curriculum back then. Like now today, if you want to learn UX design, for example, you have boot camps, you have like a formal like school, you can go to university to learn UX design now. Back then, if you wanted to learn anything, it was just trial and error. And just Google searches, just endless Google searches. And just trying to reverse engineer things, right? So let's say I wanted to learn how to build a Facebook app.
Yeah.
I would just go to Facebook docs, the help docs, and just try read through it. If I don't know how things are done, if there's a specific piece of code that I need, then I would look at other apps. I would inspect their code and just try to figure out how are they doing it. There was also like other forums that where people like internet marketers would be like helping one another. So you can post your question as well. So it was just pure trial and error. And I think the only way for you to survive at that time was just passion. You just had to be insanely curious and just wanting to do this type of stuff and crack the code for it.
I was going to say, I don't think anyone's got the patience now to trawl through forums of just crap to find that one nugget of, information that you needed. And yet you were doing that during that period of time, partly because you just loved it so much.
Yeah, I would say if I didn't enjoy doing what I was doing, hell no. I would not waste so much time and just trying to like figure out how to like solve this code issue, right? Or this bug that might have happened. But I think because I never thought about code, like to me, I just wanted to build an app to like promote these offers. Like that was the outcome that I was so focused on. So the journey there was always just part of the journey. It was just like this was just
had a problem, look for the problem, and it happened so that you need to code.
Yeah, exactly. I never wanted to be a coder. I never wanted to be a designer. It just so happened to be I wanted to build a community. Yep. So how do I do it? You have to learn a bit of design, have to learn a bit of code, and just figure it out.
That's unreal. And then keep going. Like after you obviously had built all these like viral apps and you're doing affiliate marketing, how long did that go for? And then what was your next foray before you hit UX?
Yeah, so I would say during that time where I was building these websites and stuff, that was already part of UX design. I was already building an understanding of it, especially when I was doing the affiliate marketing type of stuff, because affiliate marketing, the ultimate goal is to generate more revenue, right? And you have multiple experiments, and you would just focus time on the experiments that are working. So let's say you were trying to promote an offer. You had 3 landing pages. There's no point focusing on a landing page that's getting no sales. You just focus on the ones that are making sales, right? So you cut the crap and you just focus on what's working. What I started to realize was at the time, I was like around 18 years old. Now this knowledge we just take for granted. But for example, I would throw in a timer, for example, like a countdown, getting people like instilling urgency, right? Just trying to get people to click or like trying to convert them. But now today it's like you have all these frameworks and it's like, oh, if you want to instill urgency, you can do this and you can do this. But back then it was all trial and error, right?
Yeah.
So for me, throughout this experience of trying to make online sales, it taught me so much about design already without having to take on any sort of formal education or whatever. As I was doing affiliate marketing, I just built a deeper understanding, a deeper passion for that whole field, because I was thinking, holy shit, I can actually like, for example, put a timer and it's increasing sales. Like, why is this? Like, why? It's just urgency. I would also, when I was building Facebook apps, I remember putting a line of code where I could show who your friend was, which friends of yours were using this app as well or had like downloaded this app. And then when they reshared it, you could see your friends. Social proof. I didn't know it was social proof. I didn't know there was a name for it, but I just knew that, if I see my friend on this app, I'm more likely to do it. So I was just cracking the code and I was just understanding and finding it so fascinating that these small design decisions that you're making can have a massive influence on like how much money you can make, right? Or in the online space. So after, I think it was around when I was 20 years old, I started to think about, okay, if my businesses don't work out, I need a safety net. And I was always very cautious about the steps I wanted to take in my career because of the fear that my dad had instilled into me. You can't fuck up.
Yeah.
So
Failure is not an option.
Failure is not an option, he said. Literally, that's what he said. So I always thought, okay, if my businesses don't work out, I need at least 3 years experience in the industry, in the field that I'm doing, to make sure I can fall back onto a full-time role. So when I was 20, by that time, I had already been doing this stuff for 4 years. I had made around $300,000. The money at the time, to me, wasn't really a big thing anymore. Like at the start, it was like everything. I was so fascinated. I was like, holy shit, I'm rich. I never really spent a lot of the money though. I was always just saving it. But because at the time, money I had no utility with the money. I didn't really know how to spend it. I was so young.
So you had so much money, you didn't know what to do with it.
I didn't know what to do with it. Yeah. So my dad would always tell me to invest in property. That was his way of investment. So I actually just followed that. But when I was 20, I thought to myself, okay, do I just want to keep making money for the sake of making money? Or do I actually want to go out and learn something new, right? Surround myself with people who have been doing what I'm doing before like 10, 20 years already. So for all the reasons of the safety net, being inspired by other people and just getting a little bit bored, and the whole process was quite monotonous of just like constantly creating new websites and selling products, I thought it's time to get into the industry and find a full-time role. So I had a few very short-term engagements with like agencies, but the one job that really was a pivotal moment in my career was freelancer.com. So I think it was 2009 when I joined, and at the time they had a couple million, I think it was like 8 million users on their platform. That's massive. Like back in 2009, 2008, to have millions of users on any website, on any like web app, was huge.
Be like one of the top websites in the world.
It was one of the top like most visited websites of, at the time. I don't even think Facebook had that many in 2000, or they might have had bypassed the millions. But probably just like around 10 million, I think it was Facebook. Okay. I think Facebook was founded in 2004. I was able to apply all these design decisions and strategies that I used in affiliate marketing to build a platform to help connect business owners with freelancers. That was the whole purpose of freelancer.com. And it is still the same today. So if you want to get anything done, like you want to build a website, whatever, you can post a job in the platform. It connects you with like freelancers from all around the world. And that was it was actually a very interesting working experience because I was surrounded by really smart people. So software engineers, product managers, but more specifically the data scientists team. Being able to aggregate all this data to help inform better product design decisions. So every experiment that we pushed out, we were able to get fairly insightful insights because millions of people would interact with these experiments from day one. Nowadays, if you are working on, like, for example, maybe a mom and pop shop website, you might get like 100 views a month or like a day. It's not enough for you to have enough confidence to...
Sample size is too small.
Sample size, exactly. It's too small. So none of the data is significant enough for you to be confident enough to say, this is actually working. And when I was at freelancer.com, it was just like exposure to everything on steroids.
You were just learning at scale basically with these guys. Yeah,
I felt like I learned so much within a year that it just sort of helped define who I was and to my skill set and the way that I would think about product. Monumentally.
Wow, okay. And then how long were you at Freelancer for?
I was only there for a year, and I think it was a year and 3 months.
Okay. And then where'd you go after that?
So I felt like I had absorbed everything that I needed to learn. And for me, my career has always been quite binary. Like, I'm coming in to learn. The moment I stop learning, I move on. Yeah. I'm not emotionally attached to anything. So after freelancer.com, I was already I had like a bit of an online presence. I was always sharing my journey. I had already started to receive like leads for like building websites and whatnot. So I decided to freelance. So I started freelancing for, I think it was like 6 months. And then I realized I just don't feel ready I had the hard skills, right, of the technical skills of executing and building products and whatnot, but I didn't have the soft skills of talking to people, understanding more the interpersonal skills, like just talking to people, feeling confident, being more relaxed, understanding how to like just as simple as listening first. I didn't have all these cues. I didn't understand how to interact or engage with clients. I decided to actually work for one of my clients at the time. It was highpages.com. And they're partnered up with like realestate.com.au now. They're like Australia's largest tradespeople, so marketplace for tradespeople. So if you want to get renovations done for your place or whatever, you can put a job there, and then you could find a tradesperson to come to your place and get the job done. I was actually helping build out the product team at the time. So I was like the lead designer. But my goal, what I wanted to learn, the objective was to build a better understanding and have more experience in like leading a team, managing shit, just being able to talk to people more confidently. So that was like my ultimate goal. It was less about just the technical skills anymore. It's just like, how do I do this thing where I'm talking to people? It was so foreign to me because I spent so much time in front of the computer.
So you were that introverted kid when you were growing up, didn't communicate much with people.
Yeah, I was so introverted just because I just loved doing what I was doing, and it was just so happened to be in front of the computer.
Yeah.
So that was why, I wanted to build that skill set.
I think the fact that you had that awareness that you knew you needed that to progress, like creatively and in your career, is really good, because like it's really easy to be an introvert and just stay introverted and with what you're comfortable with. So did you find it a bit kind of challenging at the start when you were trying to talk to clients and develop the soft skills?
So I think one of the key skill sets to actually progress in life is like self-awareness. Yep. Whether it's pride holding you back, or just a lack of understanding in your own emotions, I think it's definitely something that people should think about focusing on, because it helps unlock so many opportunities. Thinking back to High Pages, I would hands down say I lacked so much confidence in presenting. I remember I was tasked to present a bit of a business case to the CEO and a product manager around like why we should be redesigning the header of our website. Because we were receiving like a couple 100,000 hits a month. Changing the header has significant SEO implications, also brand implications. There's just so many things that we needed to answer the questions for, de-risk the project, right? So I put together this whole presentation, right? I put so much effort into it. The moment came, I had the CEO sitting in front of me, had a few product managers sitting in front of me. I stood up, and the moment I started, I did not look up once, because I was just so afraid to make eye contact with someone. And that was the moment where it sort of struck me. I thought to myself, I know all this stuff, like I can execute so well, I can make lots of money, but like I can't even look someone in the eye when I'm presenting. And that was a moment when I thought, holy shit, I need to fix this. Like I can't build a business if I can't do this or achieve this. So there were like lots of different exercises that I would do with myself. Like I would film myself. I would have an idea at home and I would script something, and I would just record myself. I have the camera in front of me and I would just recite the whole script and get myself familiar with just presenting, right? Lots of different things I did, and lucky enough through practice and just getting myself out there, I was able to overcome it. So yeah.
Wow. And did you have any mentors or anyone who helped you with this process, or was it a lot of just, like you said, just record and review, just a lot of like self-evaluation, recalibrate, re-optimize?
I didn't even know mentoring existed like until a few years ago, to be honest. Like in my mind, it's always been
do it yourself.
Just, I don't think the focus was depending on myself. I think I just didn't know any better. It's like, you have a problem that you need solved. Who's going to solve it? In my mind, like I was thinking about it very logically. I'm the one who's going to solve it, so I just need to do it. I don't think I had anyone in my networks at the time either that I thought I could ask. I did have like business questions that I would be asking the CEO, who would like share thoughts with me and like sort of like took me under his wing and like actually exposed me to a lot of like business concepts and things that were happening around the business. But when it came to self-improvement, I didn't see anyone that suited that role. So I just had to do it and just figure out a way.
This episode is produced and brought to you by Social Wave. Social Wave is a strategic content marketing agency helping businesses grow revenue using video, podcasts, and SEO. Head on over to socialwave.com.au to find out more. Now back to the show.
Yeah, because you do. I mean, like just us interacting, and we've had a few interactions before this. You are very articulate, very well spoken. You obviously have had a lot of practice throughout that time. So would you say that's just through sheer repetition? Like it's just a lot of exposure, a lot of just doing?
So I actually had a stutter growing up. Yeah, which not many people knew about. It was because I was living with my grandparents for many periods throughout my childhood, mainly because my parents were working, didn't have time. My grandpa had a bit of a stutter, so I picked it up from him.
Carried it off him.
Yeah, it sort of carried off him. So there were like lots of things, obstacles, I would say. But for me, it has always been, because I had to go through so many obstacles. For example, like there was a time where like my eyes were cross-eyed and I had to do exercises to like sort of like reconfigure them to like get back to be normal. They're fine now, so
Yeah, you're fine.
but like there was just so many obstacles that I had to overcome. Like, and I think because I knew or because I was able to overcome them from just pure brute force, just constantly doing it, just practice. I think I've learned that to never doubt myself. Like I know if I just do it enough,
you'll get there.
You just get there.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have the fear because for many reasons, right? It might just be because you've never needed to overcome something. You've sort of had like just lucky enough to have things sort of paved, the path paved for you. But for me, it's just been constant struggles. And I know if you just put in the hard work.
I think the key to your success is that you're a great problem solver. And I think the fact that you've had so many problems and challenges that you've had to solve since, young age, you've been able to, it's like you're used to it. It's like second nature to you, right?
Yeah. And I think I definitely do think the way that my parents raised me, there were a few fairly interesting ways that they did raise me. So there would be one where every time we would be doing tutoring and we got like 5 out of 5 stars from our tutor, my dad would put a sticker up on this like board, right? And every time we were able to accumulate enough stickers, he would go buy us like marbles from Toys R Us.
He gamified it for you.
He gamified, right?
He UX'd you.
He UX'd me. That's where it all stemmed from.
Wow.
That's the OG, man.
What else was there? There would be, I'm just trying to think. So there would be a time where I don't know who instilled the idea. Was it my parents or was it from my sister and I? But throughout the holidays, if we were at my grandparents' place, we would like draw up all these like artworks, right? We just loved art, like doing art, like just scribbling and shit. We'd put it up when we returned home, we'd put them up on the wall and we'd get our parents to buy it. We'd like auction them off to our parents for like $1, 50 cents or whatever it was. So I think like there was a mechanism, like you said, gamification throughout childhood that made me or exposed me to this whole reward system where like you do good work, you get rewarded.
Trade in value.
Yeah, you trade in value. So as I started to get older, I had, I think, the work ethic to just like get shit done. But then I also had all these really like interesting ideas that I was exposed to when I was younger, from like selling stuff on my own to my parents gamifying like tutoring and stuff. It made me think creatively about like solutions and problems and how to interconnect them together.
Yeah. So Speaking of your parents though, I mean, the decision to not go to university and run a business at a young age, were they supportive of that?
No. So I feel like so my sister my sister has always been the more academic one. So she went to selective school. She got into, I believe, OC. She got into selective school. She went to the City
Golden
Girls.
Child, yeah.
She went to UTS, did marketing. I failed OC. I failed selective school, and I failed uni. I got like 69 UAI. I was never the chosen one. And I think this also may have influenced my drive to build a successful business as a way to prove to the world I can do it, even though I didn't make it into all these universities.
Yeah, the chip on your shoulder.
Yeah. And I think all these experiences that you go through at a young age depending on what type of person you are, glass half empty, glass half full, I was always the half full type of person. I would always see the opportunity in things. So I never let that hold me back. It just doesn't make sense. Like, why would you put thoughts in your mind to hold yourself back? It's like, there's enough people out there who's going to hold you back. So I would always just have a goal in mind and like just work towards driving it. And it was just lucky enough when I was really young, right time, right skill set, right moment where I was able to crack like a couple $100,000. My parents started to go, maybe there is something like good in this, right? So they just sort of like took a step back from telling me what to do and how to do things instead just supporting me in what I was doing. And yeah, to this day, they just support what I'm doing. They're just like, yeah, just keep doing what you're doing.
Do they know much about what you do? Like, are they fully grasp it?
It took them a very long time to understand what the hell UX design was. Even to this day, they don't really know exactly what I do, but they just know it's like websites.
You just say, Dad, it's like you giving me stars. I give people lots of stars.
Exactly. Yeah. Moving a few rectangles around, changing it from green to blue. That's like the extent to what they know.
Wow. And then let's go to when you start up your agency, your UX agency. So was that right after High Pages or something happened between High Pages?
I was at High Pages for around a year. Once again, I feel like for me it was just like a year and like absorb. A year and I'm done. So after a year or so, I jumped out to freelance again. So I'm like, okay, I feel ready now. Like I've led a bit of a team. I've like presented, but still like there were still gaps, but I'm like, you know what? I just throw myself into the deep end. I was more fascinated about making money than the full-time role. So I jumped out to freelance once again. And this time round, there was just like a lot of work. Like, so the whole industry had matured. There was so much more work. The tech scene had grown. So I started to freelance and I just hustled it out for like a year to build enough runway for me to hire my first full-time employee. Hired my first full-time employee after the first year. Then decided to hire the second, third, fourth, and just grow the company pretty much. Like officially formed Mizko Media, I think it was in 2016 when I registered the business. And then, took that for like 3 years and just started to see how far I could take it. And yeah, that was it.
How did you pick up your first clients? Like you mentioned you went freelancing, you had a lot of people. It seemed like you have a reputation in the market already. Was that how that came about or where did you find the work?
So funny enough, at the time, most of my clients were from the US. So throughout this whole process of me like doing full-time role, there was a full-time role, but I was always freelancing on the side, like just doing like projects either for myself or for clients. And I would always have a website and a personal brand. I had like Twitter when it first launched. I also had a Facebook page, but really predominantly Twitter. But then I would also always every single year redesign my portfolio. And I would try push the boundaries. So integrate more advanced code, more animations, just do things that are a little bit more forward thinking, just for fun. But because people would see that my work was a little bit more forward thinking or more creative or whatever it might be, they'll reach out and say, oh, like, do you mind like taking a look at our website or like redesigning it? So I had already built clients, like a client base along the way. When I came out to really focus on freelancing, I had already like clients lined up. So for me to jump out and actually take on freelancing full time after High Pages, I had 2 mortgages at the time. So for me to actually confidently go, okay, freelance full time, I said to myself, if I can secure 6 months of runway for me to sort of service my mortgage repayments and also like general expenses, then I would do it. So I had secured around 6 months worth of runway. Clients. Yep. Then I jumped out.
Yeah.
But it was from pure, just like a passive, long-term approach of just constantly sharing what I'm doing over so many years. People sort of like knew of this name, like Mizko.
Yeah, like I think I see a pattern amongst many people who made the move into starting their own businesses, and almost all of them didn't just go cold and was like, I'm going to start a business today and then just do it. They always had a plan, and they always had this sort of phase out of full time and then phase into whatever it was that they were doing. And then for you, it was like, even if it wasn't by intention or design, you had actually had that sort of runway where you sort of built your reputation over a long period of time before you actually decided to jump into it as well.
Yeah.
So did you like officially tell everyone you're like, I'm starting Mizko Media? Or was it like very much so like, oh, I'm picking up clients here and there, and then it grew?
Yeah, I think it's never overnight success. Like I think the moment you hear about a business, there's probably been like 1 or 2 years prior to that of just development, like fundamental building
100%.
blocks of building a business, like defining the brand, what's the strategy, what's product market fit, like how do we get set up, the operational side of the business. So for me, it was always this massive ramp up. And I think lucky for me, the ramp up was like 8 years. I started when I was 16, already like started freelancing, doing small projects online. Even though there were $10 projects, I still learned how to interact with the client, still knew what were the deliverables. However, over time, I understood like how to, how to elaborate on that process. Like how do we formalize things, how to have payment terms and all this stuff. But the ramp up was around 8 years until I actually jumped out to freelance full time.
Yeah. And we run an agency, so we know very well and good that the toughest thing that I find running an agency is all to do with scalability. When you pick up clients and, your business grows, you also have to hire. But when you hire people, it creates a whole host of other potential issues, particularly, when you're dealing with, people who might have personal issues, and there's always people are sick, and there's a whole bunch of things. And when you're reliant on essentially labor to scale your business, it can be really tough. Was that something that you experienced? What was the hardest parts of running that business?
I would say for me, and just for the record, like I'm no longer running an agency anymore. I think for me, the toughest or the biggest pain point in running an agency would actually be that it's so human capital intensive, right? The only way for you to scale, and this is, I don't know if it's a flaw, but like in terms of the business model, you can only start to grow by hiring more people. More people is more complexities, more emotions, more troubles, right? And I found that I didn't want to build a business with like hundreds of employees, purely because I love problem solving, but I don't love solving like problems for humans, right? In the workplace. I'm more passionate about solving problems for people through a solution, right? So for me, the biggest pain point was, how do I build a business that isn't human capital intensive? And that is one of the main reasons why I decided to take a step away from the whole agency world.
And then you have as everyone knows, you've got quite a large YouTube following. So when did YouTube come in, and can you walk us through your pivot from agency into what you're doing now?
Yeah. So after Mizko Media, after I ran it for 3 years, I actually took it I think it was like a 9-month break. I was just like, okay, I don't want to be running this agency anymore. And with that said, it was doing very well. It was actually very profitable. We did 1.3 mil in the year I decided to close it.
Wow.
So it was, and my parents did not understand. They're like, why would you leave all this money on the table? They just did not understand it, but they've always said they will always support my decisions. So I could see that they go, we support what you're doing, but I got no idea what you're doing. Right through that. They're like, why are you doing this, right? But for me, it definitely was more around, one of the main reasons was the scalability of the business. Second was by the time I closed down Mizko Media, I had been doing UX design for other people, just helping them solve problems for well over 10 years, right? This day in, day out. And I would say I worked harder than most people. So I was pulling in 12-hour days purely because I was passionate about it, not because I was insane. I just loved what I did. So I was just bored of doing the same thing. So I took a 9-month break, just trying to figure out what did I want to do? What I could have done, in retrospect, right, is not close down the whole thing, not exit. I had this habit of exiting things once I'm done, right? You don't have to exit a profitable business. You can pivot, right? But I was like, nah, I'm done. So after that, I helped my friend. I joined my friend in co-founding the exact type of agency.
Exactly the same type of agency.
Exactly the same. He was doing it, and I was like, oh, maybe my friend is doing it. I'll do it with him, and it might be funner, right? And then I just realized it just wasn't right for me. I think that was a moment where I go, okay, the second time around is not going to work. I just don't, my heart is not in designing.
That was your clarity.
That was my clarity.
Yeah.
But then I got out of it, right? And then when I started the Designership, this new business I'm doing now, I had tendencies of going, what's the next shiny idea, right? But this time around, I'm really getting clarity on long-term horizons instead of short-term horizons. Stop thinking in 1 year, think about 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, right? You can't change the world every single year. you may be able to change the world in 10 years time, a little bit, right? So I had to really train my mind and tell myself like, yeah, stop exiting things once it's done. You can pivot, but don't exit.
Right.
Riches sell, but wealthy people accumulate.
Yes.
Right? Riches, like you build riches by selling businesses or whatever it might be, but the wealthy, they just fucking accumulate, just like keep hoarding like assets.
It just compounds.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, like that's something I've started to learn.
Yeah. So with YouTube though, I think you've been doing that for about a year now?
Yes.
Yeah. So how did you like, start to think, hey, I can do content creation and share this knowledge? Like what inspired that?
So throughout my whole journey, I've always had Twitter. I was also on some design, so like social media platforms for designers specifically, and I'd always be sharing my work. I just like sharing my work. I think it's like a selfish thing. Like it's people commend you, people give you like likes and like love hearts and stuff saying like how good you are, whatever it might be. So it felt really good to be sharing my work. So I'm not like the whole concept of content creation was not foreign to me at all. Like I'd just been doing it for so many years. YouTube, however, was like an entirely different ball game. It's like video, getting yourself out there. The whole process of like editing videos and stuff was it just took so much time.
Yeah. So
there was definitely lots of constraints and barriers for me to get into YouTube. I had made 1 or 2 videos many years ago, which are still on my YouTube channel. But like those were the ones that required like days in, days out of just practicing in front of the camera. So when I left the agency world, I thought to myself, like, what can I do? I had like no idea. But I didn't want to waste time because like I was thinking opportunity cost. Every day I'm not doing something, I'm losing money because I could be making X amount. Yeah. And that was all on my mind, right? And I knew for a fact the moment I would say, okay, I want to do a bit of freelance work, I can make thousands of dollars. But I didn't want to do freelance. I didn't want to do agency work. So I thought, what can I do just for now? So YouTube was like a new social platform that I thought maybe it's time to like share my journey, right? Just to document this process. So I didn't have a camera, I didn't have lighting, I didn't have a microphone, I had nothing. I grabbed my shitty MacBook, I think it was like 13 or 15, I don't know what it was, went into my room, no lighting, no microphone, no nothing, and just hit record my first video.
You just didn't judge the process.
I just didn't judge the process, and I couldn't give a shit. I was just like, I got nothing like better to do. And I just didn't know what camera to buy. I didn't know what microphone to buy. And for me, it's always about like progress over perfection. Like I don't care about perfection. As long as I'm progressing, like I'm happy.
Okay, just on that, a lot of people are the opposite. A lot of people want the perfection before they start the process. So how did you realize you're like, fuck the judgment, fuck the perfect situation? Because you're in design, so this is like, sort of double that. Is that what you learned through design? You're like, let's just get it out and try and see what works and what doesn't work, and then iterate over time, versus trying to nail it, with the home run every single time from the beginning.
I think designers actually are perfectionists, right?
Yes.
Designers, they want that perfection. For me, I'm a designer, but it's not because I want to be a designer. Designer just so happened to be the tool that I use. But my goal is to build businesses. Like I've always been like in affiliate marketing, I couldn't care less about how the landing page would look, right? As long as it made me more sales, that's what I care.
You're not the artist.
I'm not the artist.
Business person.
Exactly. I am always outcomes focused. So for me, and I was not perfect at all growing up. I had so many obstacles that I had to overcome. And I just understand that nothing's ever perfect, right? So for me, it was more about like just getting my videos out, just doing my time, and I can improve it over time. If I didn't like a video later on, I can just unlist it. But for me, it was more about committing to that journey and actually getting a video out. The first video is always going to be your worst one. But if you can get your first one out, you're done, right? Like how much worse can it get? You can't, because that's the worst one that's ever going to be.
From there.
Yeah, it only goes up, right? So for me, and I just know for a fact that in the tech world, when we're doing product design or like shipping features, there's a whole concept around lean development, agile. And it doesn't prioritize perfection, it prioritizes progression, which is just constantly shipping out experiments, learning what customers say, and then just refining based on customer feedback. So that's just something that I've always grew up with.
Yeah, that's really valuable, because I think it goes back to your philosophy of like learn from mistakes, trial and error. I think everything you pursued, you've always haven't been afraid to make mistakes and learn from them. I think that's the other thing that's kind of, made you so successful.
Yeah.
Like you've been doing YouTube for a year, you've got over 50K subs. I mean, you've grown it really fast as well. And you've grown, I think, a loyal audience as well on your channel.
Yeah. So what were some of the things that you actually did do or that you felt like worked really well? Because I think sometimes when we ask this question, a lot of people say, look, there was nothing special. It was just consistency and it was hard work. Was that the same for you? Or you found like, if I did this really helped with growth. If I did that or this didn't work, like what was the insights or observations that you had when you grew it?
So what's the context of this? Is it YouTube?
YouTube.
And the growth on
growing the following
subs?
on YouTube. Yeah. So subs, but also, well, I guess the question now then is also how did that lead into Designership and how you were able to grow leads and make that become a business as a result of you growing the YouTube channel as well? I know that's a very loaded question,
yeah,
but it's like for the listeners who are listening in on this, what they really want to know is if I wanted to do something like Mizko, and YouTube seems to be one of the big reasons why, what was it that you did that led to that success?
Got it. So I think everyone knows the answer already, right? Some can live up to it and some need to work towards it. It all comes down to the quality of insights or learnings or experiences that you can share. So for example, let's say you were trying to sell a course on how to design for an app, right? You need to be able to help educate people on your style of teaching, right? And the quality and depth of knowledge you have in designing for apps through a YouTube video. It's not always about consistency because I know of a few channels where they have significant less videos than me, but they're growing faster than me, right? In different industries, of course. But like that goes to show that it's not always about volume of videos. Like you can upload 100 shit videos and get nowhere. Mm-hmm. It's more about what is the depth of knowledge you're able to share and what is the objective of your viewers. So let's say, for example, in a different industry, someone wants to watch Mr. Beast, right? They don't want to learn anything. They just want entertainment.
Right.
But Mr. Beast can give you very high quality entertainment because he's invested millions in every single video, right? Mm-hmm. So it sort of creates a major gap between him and his competitors, right? His entertainment is always going to be better than others. So if you're in design, right, what is the level of education you can provide your audience? Because what do they want? They want to learn, right? Can you deliver and over deliver on it? And if you can consistently, then people just want to follow you, right? So you have to understand first, what do my audience want? Like, why are they watching my videos? Is it entertainment? Is it educational? Like, what is it? Is it relaxation? There are channels that are thriving because people want to relax. So if you've watched Study With Me videos, literally a camera of someone studying for like 3-4 hours, but they thrive because people have a specific need. They understand that need, they're delivering on it, providing that solution, and they're doing it very well. So it's the quality of what you are providing your audience.
I like that you're taking a UX approach to your content as well.
Yeah. So UX is a great industry. For anyone who wants to get into UX, it's a great industry because everything in this entire world, this whole environment that we live in is just problems, right? And people just want to solve problems. They want solutions. So if you think about what the problem is, you can deliver a good solution for it, then you're going to be rich or whatever you want.
If I sort of syndicate everything that you've just shared so far, it's that you're not afraid of hard work. Like you work your ass off for it. So you can grind it out with the best of them. You're very deliberate about your process, which means you understand what the end goal is or what the objective is so that you are very sort of narrow in the way that you're approaching it. And then on top of that, I feel like you also study a lot in terms of like you would do your homework before you start anything. Is that something that you do a lot of, or do you just throw yourself into it and you just like, let's just give it a try?
It's funny enough, I actually don't do the homework.
You don't do the homework?
No,
okay.
I actually,
Interesting.
However, with that said, when I don't understand something, I need to understand it.
So you only do the homework when you're looking for a solution to a problem?
Yes. And that goes to show how I would perform in school as well. I never studied. I never really did my homework. But the moment I had to hand in something because I had to or I would fail, I would do it.
Right.
HSC, for example, I got 69. I think if I really did push myself, I could have gotten a high UAI. But my goal was not to fail. My goal wasn't to be, I didn't care about 100 UAI. I just didn't want to fail because if I failed, then it's a little bit detrimental. Like my parents would hate me for it, right? So as long as I passed more than 50, yeah, good enough.
I'm curious about Designership, and if you're okay with sharing this, is just some of the numbers, like how fast you've grown. Because I know you've shared this in some of the YouTube videos about like how big the business has got. So what are sort of the numbers you're doing now in terms of like turnover and income for Designership? And you can walk us through that a little bit.
So Designership has only been around for a year, but we've done over 7 figures now. I think like just over 7 figures, like 1 point something. I haven't checked the June numbers, but I think in terms of how it's compared to my previous businesses as well, I was doing around $1 million a year with the previous businesses, but it also required a lot of overhead as well. For the Designership, it's really just like myself now. So I think different industries and different services will have a different level of opportunity. And I think like that's what's really important.
Yeah, because I think about now, even as us running an agency, that yes, there's a lot of overheads, you know, human capital being a big one, physical space, the other one. And you know, if you think about just rent and payroll, that's like your two biggest expenses.
Not to mention software.
Yeah, you know, subscriptions and software and stuff like that. But certainly I think about, I've been always very infatuated with the idea of like, what is the perfect business model as well? And I think about like your Tim Ferriss 4-hour work week, lifestyle businesses as well. And I think there's a book called like, I can't remember who wrote it, but it was literally a book about one person $1 million businesses. And a lot of those insights were around people who were creating or productizing their expertise, which is essentially what you were doing. You were saying, look, I'm going to distill everything that I know about UX design into essentially a course that I can create once and then sell many times and not have the overheads with it. Is that something that you were very, like, obviously you mentioned like you were like, I did the agency once and then you went in with your friend as well and you're like, fuck this, I'm not like, definitely not going back into it. Was it very much a deliberate thing around profit, or was it around lifestyle, or what were the other sort of factors that came into play for you to decide you're like, no, this is the model that I'm going to go with?
Yeah, I think really good question. Now, I think in terms of progressing in the business world, I think there are 3 things that I think about. So first would be sort of skills, right? Like there are obviously many different skills, and as a person that wants to constantly improve, like, are you improving on all your skills, and are there new skills that you want to overcome? Then there is sort of like the opportunity, right? The opportunity is, depending on what level skill you have, you could have a level 10 skills, for example, but if you're working in a level 2 opportunity, then you're not really making the most of your skills. So for me, I felt like I had like level 9, 10 skills, but the agency world was more of like a level 5 opportunity. Right. There's a lot of money in it. There is actually so much money in it. If I really wanted to push it, I reckon we could have had like a 5 million, up to 5 mil or north of that. But it just required so much work. So I was always thinking about, okay, if I was to progress in terms of business, how do I apply my level 10 skills? I need to find a level 10 opportunity. And for me, right, this can be redefined in many different ways for different individuals. A level 10 opportunity for me means how scalable it would be, right? With limited overhead. So what is the net margins within that business if I was to sell something? I was always thinking about, okay, if I was to move on from agency, it has to be better than where I was before. So I thought about, okay, what is another market that I can tap into that I genuinely would enjoy, like I'm passionate about, that I could thrive in, but the opportunity would go from 5 to maybe an 8 or even a 10. I don't think I'm at a 10 yet. I reckon where I'm at now would be an 8, right? So I'm always thinking about, these different ways of trying to move myself forward and what might be the next step.
So as someone who, you know, almost like the proverbial like never settles, like you sort of are always thinking about the next thing. With the success of what you're doing with Designership right now, what's next for you? Have you got plans? Are you happy where you're at? Where are you taking it?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to thinking about the next thing, if you have noticed, right, throughout my whole career, it's always been like get in, get out, get in, get out, get in, get out. It's great to learn a lot, but there is a time where I believe you need to settle, right? You need to, instead of thinking yearly horizon, so 1 year horizon, 2 year horizon, it's important to think about the 10-year horizon, 20-year horizon. That is where the wealth is made. Noah Kagan says this really well, which is I will guarantee you will become wealthy and rich if you can do the same thing for 10 years, right? If you just churn it out, grind it out, because success compounds, right? So if you do very well the first year, your second year will probably do just as well or even better. The third year will even be better, fourth year, and it just compounds over time in all the different facets. So you've got your brand will compound, your operational will compound, so things will get more efficient over time. Everything just compounds. So for me, designership is always going to be a long-term horizon. That's something that I've somewhat trained myself to just like really stay focused on. Don't think about jumping to the next shiny object, but just think, okay, if the first year went well, what does the second year look like? What does third year look like? And if I feel like I've hit sort of the roof, then I need to think, instead of going deep, I need to think more broad. How do we scale horizontally instead of vertically, right? So those are the things I'm trying to think about.
Yeah, I think this is really important because I think we're in an age right now, and as we know, man, people like to jump around a lot. Like they say like lifetime careers are dead because no one ever does the same thing for their entire livelihood.
Millennials in particular.
Millennials,
Yeah.
and I sort of think about, I guess when you were saying that, the thing I thought about was the Japanese and how they devote intergenerational, like multi-generational craftsmanship in what they do. And like, you don't see that anymore. And I think I agree with you, thinking about things in decades as opposed to just years or even potentially like even months for some people is something that people really need to think about as well. I think about actually an uncle of mine who is probably one of the biggest importers of cork into Australia. And I remember talking to him and I said to him, like, so what's the next thing? And he's like, there is no next thing. Like, this is what he's been doing for the last 15, 20 years, importing cork, selling it to Bunnings and a whole bunch of other big retailers and suppliers. And he's just like, the advice was just do more of the boring work. And this guy's like, I'm telling you, like well off, like he's, rich off his balls. Like he doesn't care about like money. He's good. And yet people spend a lot of time thinking about the next shiny object syndrome, about what I'm going to do next. And to your point, we've got to get out of that sort of way of thinking because it's actually really unhealthy, not only from our mental well-being as well, but also in terms of, like you said, accumulating wealth and building wealth as well, right?
Yeah. I think, like I said before, you get rich from selling, but you get wealthy from accumulating. I don't remember who said that, but it really did click with me because all the investments that I've made, the ones that I've held the longest, have generated me the most in terms of return on investment. And I think back to, let's just say Mizko Media, if I just had held onto that, instead of exiting and changing and chasing the next shiny object, I simply just pivoted, did something similar, where would I be today, right? Instead of having to start from scratch, starting from zero once again. And starting from zero once again is like very tiring. Like I would not say that I enjoyed exiting businesses and starting from scratch. It just so happened to be like, that's just the nature of things. But if I could choose, I would definitely go back and just pivot instead of having to restart. It's just...
Would you say that is more important for us as Asians because we're all children of migrants, right? Like we're in this country, we're already starting from zero, or our parents started from zero and we're at one. So I think the importance of building, long-term wealth and having a legacy and all of that is so much more critical for us to try to build something that lasts longer. Do you think? Yeah,
I think it's also like a selfish reason as well. Like I've been down that route of having to restart and it's just tiring. Like it's just, you don't want to go through that. Like imagine having to rebuild a whole brand. Like the idea, right, of starting something new is exciting, but the process of starting something new again is like taunting. Like I dread that. I don't like it. But it's just something I have to do. So that's why I'm going to hold on to this new idea that I'm working on because I just don't want to have to go through that process.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a question around being a creator. I think a lot of people underestimate just like starting up a business, just how bloody hard it is to be a consistent creator as well. What were some of the observations or insights that you have just, doing the YouTube channel, creating content for such a long period of time, even before YouTube, you said you were obviously sharing and creating for a long period of time. Is it something that it's all cracked up to be? Or what sort of advice, I guess, would you have for someone who might be considering it? Because I feel like a lot of millennials, a lot of, the younger generation, they all want to be influencers. They probably look at you and go like, I want to be Mizko, I want to be the UX designer. So what sort of, I guess, pointed advice do you have for these guys?
Everyone's so different, right? In terms of work ethic and like work-life balance, expectations and all that. It's important to just be authentic, and I don't want to be all wishy-washy with it, but like, when I say authentic, it's important to understand like what are you able to cope with, right? It's not about what you can do this year. It's about what can you do over the next like 10 years, right? I've been doing personal branding, building my own personal brand for like the last 15 years, right? It's not how much can you just cram and do right now. It's about like, what are you comfortable with? Like, does it actually fit your lifestyle? Is it something that you genuinely want to do? Or is it because someone else has made it really interesting and you sort of like think you want to do it? I genuinely love what I do and I'm passionate about it, and that's why I can last, right? But if you're not passionate about it and you just think it's a nice idea to do it, then I would reconsider, is it something you want to do? Because if you love the process of like building an online brand, a digital brand, sharing your work and stuff, it's second nature. I don't think about it as social media. I think of it, it's just part of my process. But if you think of it as somewhat like social media, things I need to do and whatnot, then it's going to be a churn no matter how you want to frame it. It's always going to be this thing that's this thorn in your side that you just cringe of like having to do it, or you just have to sigh every time you have to go create it.
You burn out easier
and
as
you
well.
burn out easier, exactly. So I think it's important to be self-aware about like, why do I want to do social media? If I decide to do social media, like which platform suits me the best. And no one says you have to stick with it forever, right? You can always pivot, always change. I've changed from Twitter to Instagram to Facebook to YouTube. You just have to work with what you're comfortable with first. Get a bit of momentum, get a bit of success, like just get those dopamine hits and go, cool, I feel like I'm getting a bit of progress. Then you can dive deeper and think about a more like strategic approach to it.
So I think it's self-awareness. Like, people need to understand where their strengths and weaknesses are and what they're interested in, what they're not interested in, so that you can choose something that fits you, rather than hearing the proverbial generic advice, which is like, you should be on every platform, you should do it consistently, right? Because like you said, everyone is essentially different. I sort of want to wrap up, and we like to sort of finish with saying, if you had any other pieces of advice or any thoughts around if someone wants to pursue something like what you're doing. So whether it's as a UX designer or to run a business very much so like Designership, do you have any last parting words there?
I think if anyone wants to get into the design field for like UX design, product design, or anything to do with like digital experiences, it's always good to just go ahead and just design something first, right? No constraints, no rules, no nothing. What's a problem that you face, and try to design a solution for it, all right? If you struggle, that's fine. That's part of the process. You're going to struggle throughout your entire career. It's fine. You're going to face it. But it's more about, do I have a passion for this, right? And the best way to build passion is by just getting yourself into it, right? Throwing yourself into the deep end and seeing if you can survive. For me, it all started with one problem, which was, how do I bring gamers together online, right? So through that, I've built like whatever I've built today purely from that. So I think it's important to think less about the whole career route, the money with it. If you do well with what you do, the money will come. So for me, it's more about, think about what is the problem that you're facing? How would I solve it? And actually just try to create something and let that sort of like guide your decisions moving forward.
Yeah. And then if people want to either get in touch with you, they want to find out about you, if they don't know about you, even though I imagine a lot of people know about you, where's the best place to find you? Yeah,
so you can find me on YouTube, which is like youtube.com/Mizko. If you go onto Instagram, just search Mizko, Twitter, Mizko. If you just Google Mizko, you'll find
you'll find Mizko.
Yeah, Mizko. Yeah.
Amazing. Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show, and appreciate you sharing your wisdom here.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Level Asian podcast. Make sure you subscribe and leave us a 5-star review if you enjoyed the episode. And why not share it with friends and family who might enjoy it too? Also, make sure you head over to levelasianpodcast.com to join our email list and to receive the latest updates and get notified when the next episode drops. If you know a great guest we should feature, email us at contact@levelasianpodcast.com or DM us on our socials in the show notes. Catch you on the next episode.